What if I told you there's a secret gospel that denies Jesus was even the Son of God, claims he never died by crucifixion, and even predicts the prophet Muhammad? Well, welcome to the Gospel of Barnabas, a mysterious text that's become something of a viral favorite on TikTok and YouTube, and a go-to source for those who want to cry conspiracy concerning the traditional story about Jesus.
It's the Gospel of Barnabas. Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible.
Muslims became interested in this Gospel of Barnabas because it depicts the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as being foretold by Jesus. Jesus says, "After me will come one, and his name will be Muhammad."
So let's dive into the Gospel of Barnabas. Where did this text come from? What does it teach? And are Muslim apologists and conspiracy critics right when they say the church buried this gospel to hide the truth about Jesus? Let's start with the history. Unlike other apocryphal gospels discovered in the sands of Egypt, the Gospel of Barnabas has no ancient pedigree. There are no Greek or Coptic fragments, no Latin references in early canonical lists, not even a single mention by any early Christian, Gnostic, or heretical sect for the first 1,000 years after Jesus. No, to the best of our knowledge, the Gospel of Barnabas traces back only as far as the end of the Middle Ages in Europe, when two manuscripts surface around the 16th century, one in Italian and the other in Spanish. The Italian copy we still have, referred to as Codex 2662, and it's kept safely in the Vienna National Library. That's the one that scholars study and the one we've translated into English. But apart from a few historical transcripts in letters and lectures from the 1700s, and a fragment rediscovered in 1976 in my own global neck of the woods, Sydney, the Spanish manuscript has been largely lost. Now, you might have heard the viral news in 2012 of a third ancient manuscript surfacing in Turkey, one that dates back over 1,500 years. But that was entirely fake news. Scholars date this manuscript in Ankara to the 16th century, not the 6th century. And worse, it's not even a copy of the Gospel of Barnabas. It's just a Syriac translation of the canonical Gospel of Matthew. So simply put, there is no ancient evidence for the Gospel of Barnabas. So where did this controversial gospel come from? Well, the scholarly consensus is that the Gospel of Barnabas was written sometime between the late 14th century and then 16th centuries, likely by a convert from Christianity to Islam living in Italy or Spain. This was a period marked out by fierce religious debate, not just between Catholics and Protestant reformers, but also between Muslim and Christian polemics in Spain and right across the Ottoman Empire. The tensions were high, and the story of Jesus was at the center of it all. Who is he? So whoever wrote the Gospel of Barnabas seems to have created it as a bridge text, retelling the Christian story in a way that supports Islamic theology and intentionally refutes Pauline Christianity. And that becomes clear once you actually start reading its contents. The Gospel of Barnabas is a long narrative gospel, 222 chapters long, loosely built by harmonizing stories from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but with plenty of extra teaching and some wild twists. The book opens with a warning about how many have corrupted Jesus' true teaching, and you should only trust what Barnabas supposedly writes. Not a red flag at all. But much of the contents will be familiar. The virgin birth narratives, which the Quran affirms. Jesus' appointment of the same 12 apostles. Jesus' diverse miracles over demons and nature and sickness and death. And much of Jesus' kingdom teaching, like the Golden Rule or Great Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, the elevation of humility as a virtue, warnings against the dangers of wealth and rejection of hypocrisy, even a host of his classic parables. So there is plenty of overlap with the canonical Gospels, but there is also tons of novel or polemical insertions. The Gospel of Barnabas portrays Jesus merely as a prophet, explicitly denying he is the Son of God or anything more than just a man. Take this dramatic reversal of Peter's famous confession: "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." In Matthew 16, Peter's response to Jesus' identity question earns him praise. But in the Gospel of Barnabas, Jesus angrily rebukes Peter, threatening him with hell for calling Jesus the Son of God. "Beware that never again you say such words, because God would reprobate thee." Chapter 96 even has Jesus cursing anyone who would insert into his sayings that he is the Son of God. No doubt a veiled swipe at the Gospel of John and Paul's epistles. In fact, Jesus denies even being the Messiah in the Gospel of Barnabas. Instead, in chapter 97, identifying Muhammad by name as the one who is to come. And perhaps it's the strangest turn of events. Chapters 215 to 217 claim that God saved Jesus from arrest and execution. The story recounts how, upon betrayal, Jesus was secreted away from earth by the 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, and that God made Judas Iscariot look like Jesus, so that Judas was arrested in Jesus' place and finally condemned to crucifixion. Sound familiar? That's because these ideas echo the Quran, especially Surah 4, 157, which says Jesus was not crucified, but only made to appear so. And this Islamic recasting runs deep. The book even folds in Islamic phrases like "God is great" straight from the Shahada into its pages. But the Gospel of Barnabas doesn't just sound Islamic. It looks unmistakably medieval. As scholars have catalogued an entire list of anachronisms. Jesus is described as sailing in ships, storing wine in wooden barrels, and walking through villages with dukes, friars, and gold ducats. All terms from medieval Europe, not first century Judea. Then there's a dead giveaway. In chapter 82, the Gospel of Barnabas claims that the Jewish year of Jubilee comes every 100 years. But according to Leviticus 25, the Jubilee was only every 50 years. So where did this 100-year number come from? Well, a papal decree issued by Pope Boniface VIII in the year 1300 AD, over a millennium after Jesus. That single line anchors the book firmly in the late Middle Ages, and it's not the only mistake. In chapter 3, the author confuses the timeline of Jesus entirely, saying Pontius Pilate ruled Judea and Caiaphas was the high priest at the time of Jesus' birth, rather than 30 years later during Jesus' ministry. No wonder scholars across the board, Christian, secular, and even Muslim, dismiss the Gospel of Barnabas as a medieval forgery, riddled with propaganda and historical errors. In fact, prominent Muslim thinkers like Rashid Rida and Abbas al-Akkad have publicly rejected it, calling it harmful to Islam because it undermines genuine historical inquiry. Contrast that with the canonical Gospels. They were written within living memory of the time of Jesus. They're backed by an avalanche of early manuscripts in the first few centuries, and they get all the cultural minutiae right when it comes to place and people names, customs, politics, and geography. By comparison, the Gospel of Barnabas appears out of nowhere 1,500 years later, with no textual lineage, no ancient citations, and a theology tailor-made for the Islamic debates later on. That's not history, that's fan fiction. So does the Gospel of Barnabas expose some church-wide conspiracy? Not at all. The early church didn't hide this gospel, it just didn't exist. And when it finally did appear in the Middle Ages, both Christians and Muslims dismissed it as an obvious fabrication. Still, its online appeal is easy to see. In a skeptical world, any story that paints Jesus as a misunderstood prophet, betrayed by power-hungry priests and apostles, that can feel compelling. And it fits the modern suspicion of institutions and a hunger for hidden truth. But the irony is thick, because the Gospel of Barnabas ends up doing the very thing it accuses others of, rewriting Jesus to serve a later religious agenda. So what about the real Barnabas? Well, the book of Acts introduces Barnabas, also known as Joseph, as a Levite from Cyprus, one who generously sold land to give the proceeds to the apostles. The proximity to the events of Pentecost here suggests that Barnabas most likely became part of the early Christian community in Jerusalem. After the conversion of Paul of Tarsus and his transformed preaching in Syria, Acts says that while the other Christians still feared Paul, Barnabas alone took the risk to take him to the apostles, vouching for his change of heart. Barnabas, whose name means son of encouragement then, he accompanied Paul on his first missionary journey, and he played a key role in the gospel spread to the Gentiles, as well as at the Council of Jerusalem in Acts 15. But while Paul and Barnabas agreed on the gospel, they had a severe split, a sharp disagreement on whether to give John Mark a second chance. Colossians 4:10 explains that Barnabas was Mark's cousin, perhaps another reason why Barnabas sought to restore Mark after his earlier abandonment of their mission. But with Paul mentioning Barnabas repeatedly in his later letters, and then in the pastoral epistles even speaking of his affection for John Mark and his desire to see him, there is zero evidence that Barnabas and Paul taught some different gospel. Certainly there's no hint in the ancient sources that Barnabas denied the cross, questioned Jesus' divinity, or predicted some other prophet to come like Muhammad. So whoever wrote this so-called Gospel of Barnabas simply hijacked his name to lend credibility to a message that Barnabas himself would have rejected. Simply put, the Gospel of Barnabas is a pseudonymous creation. It's a forgery, leeching off of Barnabas's good name. So by all means, read it. Just don't mistake a 15th century forgery for a 1st century gospel. As medieval propaganda, it offers no fresh insight into the historical Jesus, but only tells us how Islamic polemicists tried to recast him later on. Because according to our best sources from the first century, the historical Jesus didn't deny being the Son of God. He claimed it openly. The historical Jesus didn't hide in heaven to escape the cross. He embraced it to lay down his life for our sins. And Jesus, he didn't point forward to some other prophet. He called us to believe in him as the only way to the Father. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you are looking for more on the life of Jesus, let me be a Barnabas and encourage you to subscribe right now to the channel. Here at Questioning Christianity, we have hundreds of videos helping you connect the Christian story through apologetics, theology, history, science, and philosophy. Thanks for watching, and until I see you in the next video, truth invites questioning.